I'm Billy S, welcome back to the channel. Today we're perfect guarding puppets, burning carcasses, and slaying humans, as we rank all 25 Lies of P bosses from worst to best. Today's video will be ranking bosses 25 through 11, with a part 2 to this video covering my top 10 at a later date. If it's already been uploaded as of the time of you watching this, check the description, the link will be posted there when it's available. Just to be completely transparent, I have platinumed Lies of P, I have played the full game up to the end of New Game Plus 2, I've got every weapon, every amulet, most defense items, all the records, I've chatted with every NPC, and I've seen everything this game has to offer. So I feel like I've got a good grasp of the mechanics, at least from the perspective of a motivity build player. It's also worth noting that I completed this game prior to the 1.2 patch, which reduced the HP of some of the major bosses, which I will bring up in their segments if they're affected. There's also a buff to Fable Arts that gives you hyper armor now for your 3 and overcharge arts, meaning no more getting knocked out of your super move and wasting all your energy, because let me tell you, there was no worse feeling, and that happened to me for many of the fights on this list. Anyway, that's enough rambling. All 25 boss fights in Lies of P, ranked. And let me know your favorites in the comments below. At number 25, the bottom of our list, we have the Door Guardian from Archi Abbey. And before anyone asks, I looked up that word, it's Greek, that's how it's supposed to sound. The Door Guardian guards the door to the Abbey, and you need to slay him to acquire the high-level Alchemist's badge it holds, needed to progress. A high-level alchemist who's been experimented upon and infused with ergo, he is a large, hulking behemoth with surprising speed and a deadly secret. There are only a couple of truly large opponents in Lies of P, but if you're hit by an attack from one such as the Door Guardian, you're inflicted with a shock status effect. Not the electric kind, but instead the emotional kind. Getting hit by something that big is going to rattle anybody, and when shocked, P's stamina regen is slowed significantly. This can make things difficult when you're low on stamina and underneath his legs, as all it takes is 1 extra second and you're taking another hit that you could have dodged. The main reason the Guardian is my least favorite fight though is the fairly uninspired way to defeat it. Like the Tower Knight from Demon's Souls, the Fire Giant from Elden Ring, the Iron Golem from Dark Souls, one of those legs is a weak spot that, when injured enough, causes the boss to fall prone on the ground, allowing you to get a fatal attack on his head, which does massive damage, like half the health bar damage. Rinse and repeat until the boss is down. This fight just doesn't really highlight the strengths of Lies of P's fairly unforgiving combat system, instead acting as a simple mid-boss that tests your awareness, and that's okay. Not every boss needs to be a winner, perhaps the puzzle element of the weak spot will appeal to some people. But for me, I'd just seen so much better from the game at this point, and it didn't feel innovative enough to hold my interest. And just avoiding our bottom spot, we have a similar style of boss to our previous entry, the Puppets of the Future. There are 3 of these mechanical marvels fought throughout the game, the first in Venigni Works, which you'll likely see pretty immediately as you enter, and then 2 in the mid-game Barren Swamp area. Their mechanics are 1-for-1 with the Door Guardian, as in order to damage them you have to smack at their legs to win the day, only this time there's no weak spot, you just do good damage from the start. And they also inflict shock from their attacks, which makes sense. They're massive. It gave me Nier Automata vibes. What I like though is the thought put into the placements. See, the Venigni Works puppet of the future rewards exploration, as it starts off in a pool of poison, but if you explore the level, you can find a hidden lever that drains said poison, allowing you to fight the boss on an even playing field, and from there, the boss only has 3 moves, a 1-foot stomp, a 2-foot stomp, and a 360-degree wrecking ball spin that can be avoided by staying beneath it. The moveset is slow and simple, with this boss mainly being a fight that's more spectacle than substance. The Barren Swamp variations are what upgrades this boss from 25th to 24th though. After clearing a nearby ballista tower, or not, because the ballistas can damage the boss if you feel like it, you'll discover their movesets are slightly altered. Instead of 1 stomp for each of their attacks, they do 3 stomps, both for their 1-foot and 2-foot attacks. It's a small difference, but absolutely changes the way you manage your stamina. Given they're all technically optional, rewarding you with valuable quartz to upgrade your P-organ, they're worth killing, and I never found they got old to fight in any of my playthroughs. But at the same time, they just don't engage the player in the same way as other bosses, and provide a healthy baseline for Lies of P's easy boss encounters. At number 23, we have the Walker of Illusions, found in a workshop attic in Central Krat. Now, the reason this boss lands so low is because it's a glass cannon, and my build was specifically designed to absolutely melt bosses like this. The Walker uses fast flurries of knife attacks, very surgical in her strikes. More dangerously though, she has a scream that can build up the disruption status effect, which you'll have dealt with for the last level, so it's nothing new, but if it fills up completely, you instantly die. I find this effect far more forgiving though than its Soulsborne counterparts, Curse and Deathblight, as you generally have more gear designed to raise your resistance, tons of access to special healing ampoules, and the scream is well telegraphed. Her real power comes at half health, when she splits into 2, becoming 2 Walkers of Illusions, thus. The second has a smaller health bar, but if you're running a technique or advanced build, I assume you may struggle with the DPS to burst your way through that clone. I've been seeing people complaining about the Walker being difficult, and I can only assume with my Motivity build, I was just doing enough damage quickly. Her attacks can be dodged through, but I'd recommend guarding sometimes as well. It pays to do a bit of both. Even with my Reckless playstyle, I was able to make decent headway here, and that makes me happy. Strafing is very much your friend in Lies of P, and can make some of the tougher humanoid bosses just that much easier. And as I said, my Motivity build had a Fable art that could absolutely decimate the clone, so by the time I even realized that was an aspect of the fight, the clone was already dead, and this was still my experience in New Game Plus 1 and New Game Plus 2. Sadly, this boss is a little undermined by becoming a regular enemy in the game's final area, because it doesn't have the cloning ability. I normally wouldn't complain about this, I usually like when a boss is reused in a fun way, but without the cloning element, she just becomes a bit of a stabby enemy, not terribly interesting. Next up on our list, we're actually blitzing through quite a few fights in this one entry, because ranked 22nd through 15th on my list are the Lies of P Stalker fights. These are the equivalent of the Hunter vs Hunter fights in Bloodborne, or the Player vs Invader fights in the other Souls games. You'll face a humanoid character who wields one of the weapons you can find in-game. They're characterized by the animal masks they wear, and they all come from the Stalkers faction. These are effectively Krat's militia, who are often under the employ of either the Workshop Union, the Nobility of Krat, or the Alchemists. They're the lapdogs of the city. But when the Workshop Union tower fell, so did their faction, and you encounter various stalkers of different alignments and mental states throughout your journey. Many of them are optional fights, or while on the main story path have ways to avoid them, but since they all function very similarly, I'm ranking them all here to save myself some trouble. I'm still going to go through each fight briefly though, from my least favourite to most favourite. In 22nd, we have the mouse-masked Survivor. Found in a basement room of Venini Works, he's been wandering Krat since the fall of the Workshop Tower and bearing the guilt for losing his brother in the accident. And as you're a puppet, he goes completely feral and tries to kill you. Like most stalkers, he is very susceptible to strafing, allowing for quick backstabs. But if you let him continue his combo, his stamina can go on for a while. He just doesn't have anything terribly unique about him to warrant a higher spot, and I think the other stalkers are all more interesting. It doesn't help that I actually found him way later in my playthrough than intended, as I was looking for the Venini Works Trinity door in the late game and accidentally stumbled into his boss arena. In 21st, we have the Owl Doctor, found in a hidden hut in the barren swamp. Here he tries to kill you because he believes that all humans must die a human in Krat. He's completely delusional and wields a bone-cutting saw, which was a nice surprise. I love his costume, but outside of him introducing a ranged weapon to the mix with his dagger, his fight doesn't leave a lasting impact, especially if you have wide swinging weapons that have the potential to bounce off that one pillar in the room's center, which is just annoying. Breaking into the top 20 is the Robber Weasel, a fight you may think is obligatory, but is actually optional if you just run past her and up the stairs. She uses a fire axe and fast yet heavy swings to cut you down. She also has a ranged attack she likes to use when you make distance, making healing a risky move, and she also has a fury attack that launches her towards you at record speeds. Despite her weapon breaking rather quickly with some perfect guards, I found myself constantly on the back foot during her fight, often getting cancelled out of my big-fitting Fable Art attacks or just regular combo swings. I feel like I would have enjoyed this fight more if it wasn't for the flawed voice acting. Taking a small tangent, a majority of these Stalker fights lack any ambiance. There's never any background music outside of the two obligatory Stalker fights, which works in a game like Bloodborne where you've got so much background ambiance to soak in, but here there isn't much, and you have each Stalker cycling through 1 to 3 voice lines, many of which repeat. It can get grating. The Robber Weasel, in my opinion, has the worst of these. Who thought,
"Welcome to the city of the future, and the future is death,"
was a line befitting of a thief from the slums? I mean no offense to her voice actress, I'm sure she's extremely talented, but this was just not the role. It felt like an American attempting to do a Londoner accent, and as a Brit, that just really triggers me. In 19th, we have the White Lady who'd like to speak to the manager. She's one of the 2 obligatory Stalker fights, and she has a really cool moveset, some fun voice lines, a great setup in the abandoned auditorium, and her lore is quite tragic. Her sister, the opera singer Adelina, secretly had her poisoned so that she could take all the fame for her voice. Yet Patricia, the White Lady, had no clue and fights us for her sister's honor, not knowing her sister was the biggest snake of them all. It's a shame she also suffers from the strafing strategy, something I discovered in New Game Plus, because initially I actually found her fight hard. Cheese, ruining Stalker fights since 2023. In 18th, we have the other obligatory Stalker fight, the Mad Donkey. Set up on a lonely bridge, you're forced to slay this Stalker to save Geppetto, and his large weapon makes anything you have at this point in time feel like a twig. It's your first real fight against another human, and not having many tools at my disposal, I enjoyed the challenge that came from it. He's not insanely easy, but also not too frustratingly difficult, and once I unlocked his donkey helmet for winning, I never took it off. He's actually quite tragic when you learn he's already terminally ill due to the petrification disease, so he really has nothing to lose as he fights for answers he's never going to receive, and given the events of the endgame, I think he was actually in the right when it comes to Geppetto. In 17th, we have the Atoned at the end of Moonlight Town. Yes, this is an optional fight, but it's only optional if you found and defeated the Survivor Stalker earlier at Venini Works, as this unlocks the Stalker's Promise gesture, which allows you to pass her without bloodshed. If you do choose to fight her like I had to, you get a fairly well-telegraphed moveset that also serves as your introduction to the Decay status effect, which will be very prominent in the next few levels. Decay, once fully built up, acts both as a poison and as a weapon degradation effect. If you get decayed in a boss fight without the ample item to heal it, you may as well let yourself die. She introduces it, as well as her pickaxe weapon, in great fashion, not too overwhelming, yet harder than the average enemy, especially at this point where you're still learning the game. And lastly, in 16th and 15th, we have the Red Fox and the Black Cat respectively. These fights I only got the chance to experience in New Game Plus, so I can't speak to the difficulty per se. but I can speak to the lore significance behind their fights, which puts them ahead of the other stalkers for me from an emotional perspective. Because, let's be real, none of the stalker fights are amazing, they're all the same coat of paint with a new fancy animal costume, and I'm very biased towards the people I became friends with. You see, you meet up with this pair throughout the game, first at Venini Works, then in the Marlem district, where they accompany you for a short while, and you know what? They felt like friendly faces. I wanted to trust them. So when I had the option at the end of the grand exhibition to give them gold coin fruit, of course I did. You won't see them again until the end of the game at Archi Abbey, where you'll first meet the Black Cat, and then later on the Red Fox. And if you have the gold coin fruit to spare, you get the good ending, where they both escape Krat and you even become friends. So fighting them is painful. Of the two, the Red Fox put up more of a fight, with extremely fast flurries that, were I in New Game, I might have had to learn. But at the end of New Game Plus, I knew my build, I had my strategy. The Black Cat ranks higher though because, 1, I prefer his arena, and 2, have you not seen my channel icon? Bias. Viewer, wait. I'm not ready for you to go to the next entry yet. My channel is getting closer and closer to my goal of reaching 10,000 subscribers by the end of 2023. Just look at how many of my viewers aren't subscribed right now. Let's rectify that. Be sure to parry that subscribe button to stay up to date on all my future content. Back to the video. Finally, we escape the Stalker Nightmare, and next up on the list is the first boss of the game, the Parade Master. This large and in-charge robotic man is here to school all the children, and I literally mean that. In New Game Plus, I was able to understand the gibberish he was spouting, and I distinctly recall the line, "Kids get the stick." As far as first bosses go, I think he's the right difficulty to ease the player in. You've just fought through the central streets on the way to Hotel Krat, and without access to your hub and the tools there, you don't want to make the boss blocking those basic functionalities too difficult. Memorable, sure. I mean, that opening cutscene alone says so much about his personality, a jolly parade master whose show must go on even if the audience is bloodied and gone. He uses attacks with purposefully exaggerated wind-ups so you can read the timing with ease, and his main Fury attack that sees him slam to the ground is really satisfying and surprisingly easy to parry. In a vacuum, I think the Parade Master is fabulous. However, he just doesn't stack up in terms of mechanics or memorability when compared and contrasted with the rest of the boss roster. There are just so many exciting fights in this game for me that being the first one up just makes him a little less memorable. Which is wild, given I'm saying this about a puppet that literally rips off its own head via its gigantic top hat and begins using said top hat head as a hammer under half health. That's the quality Lies of P is working with. The last giant ripping off its arm wishes it was the Parade Master. It's a good thing then that this isn't the last time we'll be seeing this boss on this list, though you'll have to wait for my top 10 video for that breakdown. Lo and behold, the circus is in town, and given we just beat up the Parade Master, the clowns are out to play. The Mad Clown Puppet is a mid-level boss fought just before you reach the Opera House, and if you play your hand smart, you can make this a much easier experience for yourself. Just run past the puppet, up the nearby stairs, and into the courtyard with the next Stargazer. The puppet will follow you, but you'll also be able to get a nice checkpoint so you never have to handle those flamethrower-wielding puppets and that uphill climb up the fiery streets of Rosa Isabel ever again. Fighting the Mad Clown one-on-one is where this boss really shines, but I also know this is a very polarizing fight for the fanbase. The Mad Clown Puppet works on a lot of delayed attacks where you have to observe and learn the timing to react to. Getting chain comboed by his Fury punch attack is both hilarious and annoying. His spinning slam attacks feel overbearing in the moment, but once you realize you can very quickly get multiple perfect guards by baiting this move, it becomes invaluable for you to get him to perform, as you'll be constantly staggering him. My main issue comes from his belly thrust move, which has a range of whatever the fuck it feels like. Sometimes he'll thrust a short distance, other times he's halfway across the city and back again. I just want some consistency, as it makes the boss feel surprisingly oppressive with his ability to close whatever distance he feels like. Perfect guarding is really the only way to do well against the Mad Clown, with a pinch of lightning damage to get those stuns, and some strong hitting Fable Arts to have you eventually taking him down. The design though is top notch, with the way it's cackling maniacally as it attacks, and then when it's staggered it crouches down in fear, so much personality for what could be seen as a fairly throwaway mid-boss. That being said, did we really need a Thunder variant at the start of the Barren Swamp? Really? Introduced as early as the start of Elysion Boulevard, the Black Rabbit Brotherhood are a gang of street criminals that rule the Marlem district with an iron fist, stealing and looting what they can while taxing the people on their home turf without remorse. And you come into contact with them twice on your journey, and it's the second encounter that takes our number 12 spot. Found in the combat arena of the Relic of Trismegistus, the 3 surviving members of the Brotherhood vow to take you down for their brother. All the while, the coffin belonging to their eldest sits in the center of the boss arena, menacingly. This is a 1v3 fight where the siblings will each take turns aggressively attacking P. In theory, this makes sense. If all 3 siblings attacked at the same time, the balance would be completely off. But by ensuring that 2 of the siblings are always hanging back, attacking every once in a while, you are able to eventually handle the fight. However, each sibling has a different elemental buff they can add to their weapons, and let me tell you, the little rogue with decay is the most irritating enemy in this game. Able to kick you to the ground, flip and dip, dive and swerve. He may not hit hard, but if that status effect is inflicted, your run is just about as finished as your weapon durability. All the while having to avoid the eccentric firing shots at you, or the third brother who constantly grapples and pulls you across the arena at the worst times. It veers into the territory of annoying, and while I managed to brute force my way through their health bars, the fight never felt as intuitive as their first encounter from earlier in the game. Once one sibling remains though, the eldest brother revives, joining the fight in the world's most obvious plot twist. Paired with his aggressive moveset you'll already be familiar with from earlier, along with a special new shockwave attack to watch out for. Now, my strategy for this fight was to kill the rogue first to get rid of the decay, and then get the other 2 brothers a hit or 2 away from death each, so that once I kill the second sibling, which is the trigger for the eldest brother to revive, I can then immediately kill the third sibling and make it a 1v1. The eldest brother is about as tough as his last incarnation. If you manage to learn that fight, this one will be a breeze, especially if you have the puppet string Legion arm fully upgraded. It'll let you get some devastating hits on him with the right timing. I knew a rematch with this quartet was bound to happen, but given how much I think they nailed the gank fight concept with their first encounter, this second one was always going to be an uphill battle. And just missing out on our top 10, the final boss battle on this list, it's the Grand Exhibition's Champion Victor. This roided up superhuman has been blessed with rebirth thanks to the work of the alchemists, and his goal is to absolutely destroy P. His attacks are purely physical, with a lot of wrestling, a lot of grabs, and a lot of charges you can dodge to avoid. And that's actually why this boss fight doesn't reach my top 10. Dodging. Because for me, the best lies of P bosses are those that really ask the player to engage with both perfect guarding and dodging, to create a flow where you're learning the moveset and finding those openings to counterattack. But with Champion Victor, I was able to beat him without much issue just by dodging around him. I barely needed to interact with the perfect guard mechanic and could win by spamming my dodge and hitting him a bunch. It reminded me of a Dark Souls 3 boss fight, which isn't always a bad thing, but in this instance, it wasn't what I wanted to see or was expecting from a boss fight this late into the game. However, he did do something I quite liked. While he, like many of the late game bosses, had 2 phases, it was all consolidated into a single health bar. It's a very small aesthetic choice that really shows how powerful Victor is, that he has such a large health bar that he had no need for 2. It's the same as Gale in Dark Souls 3, and we all know how we feel about Gale. His first phase teaches you the combos he likes to use, and most can be sidestepped or backstepped from. And if you have any acid to use against him, even better. He actually leaves a lot of openings so you can wail on him, since he just can't help but taunt or scream in place before every attack. His second phase is honestly more of the same, except he hits harder, and his charge attack he likes to use has 3 charges instead of 1. Very Vort of the Boreal Valley coded. As long as you stay remotely cognizant of his attacks, he will fall fairly quickly and you will win the day. My prediction is that Champion Victor will be a top 10, top 5 boss for most people watching this video right now, as his fight doesn't force the Souls fans outside of their comfort zones. It's very much what we're used to, and more power to you if this ends up being the case. But for me, I wanted a more interesting moveset that engaged with Lies of P's core mechanics. Thank you everyone for watching today's video. The top 10 Lies of P bosses, in my opinion, will be posted next week on Friday, so stay tuned. And also, consider checking out the description, as I am currently doing a Lies of P community boss ranking based around easiest to hardest. If you want to be a part of that and help contribute to the project, there is a link to the Google form down below. It closes on the 17th of October. Thank you so much for your support so far, and be sure to parry that subscribe button to stay up to date on all of my future content. My socials are on screen now, feel free to follow where you feel comfortable. I recommend my Twitter or my Blue Sky if you're interested, and a massive shout out to my patrons over on Patreon. You guys are amazing, thank you for another month of support, and I'll see you guys next time. Adios!